I'm WG and it's time we have a look at Chizuru's full kit. So we'll be going over everything from the character to the partner to the epiphanies to the ego manifestations in just one video. And here we already have ourselves Chizuru, a shaman who sealed herself who sealed the eternal darkness. She is a void and psionic. This is the in-game chibi-esque module, you could say. And here you already have the banner. So it didn't get shown during the English livestream, but the banner includes Tressa and Ray. So it's going to be a Chizuru 50% raid up with Tressa and Ray as the 50% 4-star raid up characters. Then for all of you interested, yes, she has a lobby screen, and yes, it is probably one of the bigger reasons to summon for her. Here we also have the sticker. This might be the sticker you gain upon using Affinity. Alright, so before we get into Chizuru's kit, there is 4 things you need to learn about. Number 1, bind. When bind cards of this unit are in hand, they stack into 1 card. So 1 bind card plus 1 bind card makes a bind card at 2. If the bind of that card then becomes 3 or higher, it goes from Shadow Moon or Shadow of the Moon to Shadow of the Moon Plus, making it a stronger card. And the card can itself stack up to 5 stacks, and upon using the card you go back to bind 0. Inhibit is a debuff, which says, or I guess you could call it a buff, it depends, which says you cannot gain AP except from turn start or breaking an enemy, meaning ravage, meaning you clear the tenacity bar. So clearing the tenacity bar and start of the turn are the only ways to get AP, but in exchange, Shadow of the Moon and Shadow of the Moon Plus gain an additional hit. Next up, the Cursed Jackets. Cursed Jackets is a debuff that you can apply on the enemy. When an ally uses an attack card other than a bind card on a target with the Cursed Jackets debuffs, Chizuru gains herself 1 Will-O-Wisp. When applied to a different target, remove Cursed Jackets. So you can have 1 active Cursed Jacket on 1 target at the same time. Will-O-Wisps themselves is Chizuru's unique resource, and what it says is that every 5 stacks of Will-O-Wisp, you create 1 Shadow of the Moon. The Shadow of the Moon is the bind card mentioned in the top, meaning 5 Will-O-Wisp is 1. After 25 Will-O-Wisps, you get your 5-stack bind card. So now that we have that out of the way, let's have a look at her actual cards. So we'll be starting with the standard cards. We have ourselves the Moon Slash, which does a 60% times 2 damage, and the Moon Slash then again 60 times 2, with potential improving upon these basings, I think, with adding an additional hit, taking it from 120 to 180. The Spirit Flames Ward is a shield card, and then we have our first card, which is Karmic Flames. Initiation, meaning it starts out in your hand, and you apply 1 Cursed Shackle to the target, and Cursed Shackles at 1 hit. Now the real question here is, what is this Cursed Shackle double dot question mark? This might just be that if you use this on a target that has Cursed Shackles, use the effect here, but that's still not 1000% clear. Then we have Tsukuyomi, however you pronounce it, which states that it's a 0-cost skill card, 2 Will-O-Wisp for each hit of the next attack card of this unit used. So if, for example, your next hit is a 3-hitter, then you get 6 Will-O-Wisp stacks, and especially at base version, it only goes for her herself. Now we come to Bound at Dusk, the most controversial card. It is the initiation, it is unique, and at the start of the turn, you gain the Inhibit debuff. The Inhibit debuff is the one that increases Shadow of the Moon hits up while cutting your AP regeneration, but in exchange decreases the cost by 1 until 1 random cards of other combatants are used, meaning that at base level you can play the Bound of the Dusk at 0 cost so long until you don't play a card of somebody else. That's just base Bound of the Dusk. And then we have the Oni Hunt, which has haste, meaning that it doesn't make an enemy's action count go down, and it does 60% damage times 3 and adds plus 30% damage to the next bind card used. So now we have ourselves the bind cards, the Shadow of the Moon. So Shadow of the Moon at bind 1 has retain and says plus 50% damage while gaining plus 20% damage amount for each bind stack, meaning it is a 50% or a 70% hitter at bind 1 or bind 2, and then the moment you get to 3 bind stacks, it changes to Shadow of the Moon Plus, which says 70% damage times 2, heal 5% of max HP, and plus 20% damage for each stack, which means at minimum you're looking at a 70 plus 60, so 130 times 2 hitter, going up to a 190 hitter, a 170 hitter, so plus 100% damage if you go from bind 3 to bind 5 by gaining more Shadow of the Moon cards that then stack with themselves. So that is her standard cards. I guess this is actually also quite important. You have yourself the ultimate. The ultimate is a single target hit at 250% damage, and for each Shadow of the Moon created, this damage increases by plus 50%. So base is 250, maximum is 750% single target void damage if you've created up to 10 Shadow of the Moons upon using this card at a 5 cost. Now you'll have to excuse something that's a little bit more on the unfortunate side, and as during the English live stream we did not get the epiphanies for the character, so we'll be going through them here with translation features, though I did check through them, especially also with original wording, so these should be for the most part 90-95% plus correct. So we have ourselves initiation and 150% damage, meaning you go up from 100 damage to 150 while still keeping the effect that if the target has Curse Checker, you add 1 hit to this card itself. Then for the second version, you have 150, you apply Curse Checker, and what Curse Checker, if the target has Curse Checker and you play this card, the cost of the next card goes down by 1. Then for the third one, 180 damage, so up by 80, applies Curse Checker, and if you attack a Curse Checker target with this, you multiply your damage by 100%, meaning instead of it going 180 to 280, it goes 180 to 360. And then we have ourselves a skill card at 2 cost, applies Curse Checker, and you generate 1 Shadow of the Moon, which is the bind card or equivalent to 5 Will-O-Wisp stacks. Then here we have the initiation exhaust. You apply Curse Checker, and when the target with Curse Checker is killed, you create this card again, allowing you to apply the Curse Checker to another target. So this card is definitely a favorite to look out for, whereas as well the fourth version isn't all that bad, and the first 3 are mainly for if you already have Curse Checker applied to get an additional bonus out, where for example the double hitter can be quite sweet. Then right here we have ourselves the second card, and again from left to right, we have the next own attack card used gains plus 1 hit, meaning you could for example take the 360% version from the last card and make it 360 times 2, which is frankly quite sweet. And then you gain 3 Will-O-Wisp for each hit of the next own attack card used, meaning if for example you use the highest hitter we have, the Shadow of the Moon Plus, with the bind checker buff at 3 hits and you add a 4th hit, you gain yourself 12 Will-O-Wisp stacks or 2 full Shadow of the Moon buff stacks, which is the 5 Will-O-Wisp equals 1 Shadow of the Moon, and then you get 2 leftover Will-O-Wisps. Then with the next one you gain 3 Will-O-Wisp for each hit of the next attack card, meaning that this applies to any character's attack card instead of just her own cards, which makes this frankly overpowered. Think about for example using this with a Luke Bullet Demon having like 40 hits, or a Mei Lin multi-kicker giving you like 20 hits, so you could go anywhere from 60 to like 120 Will-O-Wisp, making this the clear favorite, though there's still a chance that there is a mistranslation in here, but it is very doubtful. So this card is definitely, the second one is one you should be looking out for. The next Shadow of the Moon used, or next Shadow of the Moon Plus, gains 2 hits, meaning that the upgraded version of the bind card pass 3 goes from a 2 hitter to a 4 hitter with the buff to a 5 hitter, which is honestly quite okay. Well, quite okay. Gain a 3 Will-O-Wisp per attack card in hand, takes a look at how many attack cards you have in hand, multiplies that by 3. So if you have, let's say, 7 attack cards in hand, you get 21 stacks. 21 stacks is 4 bind cards, and these bind cards are then going to fuse into each other and upgrade the bind cards respectively. Whereas this one right here is a upgrade card while also being a lead card, meaning that at 50% of the time you're going to be able to play this for free. And what it does is when you use your own attack card, you gain 2 Will-O-Wisps. So out of all of these, the second one seems broken if this actually goes through as we have it here. And the other ones are definitely less crazy if you think about like full team synergies. Now, then we have ourselves the bind card. Now, the bind card, what it's going to be is it's always going to have the same effect, but it's going to have a different effect based on you having inhibit. Like, for example, how the first one is going to reduce the cost of 2 random cards by 1 until used, which makes up for the fact that you can't get any more AP. You can kind of treat this as like a play out the card gets plus 2 AP. The next one, when you use a Shadow of the Moon card, you reduce the cost by 1 until used of the next card, meaning that if you can play 1 Shadow of the Moon plus, you reduce the cost by 1. If you can play 2, you reduce the cost of 2 cards by 1. So this is something that can scale. The more Shadow of the Moon pluses you can play, the more cost you can reduce. Then here we have ourselves at the start of the turn, you gain the inhibit and activate 2 other combatant cards. So especially if you're playing something very expensive, you can lock away your AP, but at least you can activate two other combatant cards, which could also be quite funny if you then use the forbidden card, which allows you to activate 2 other cards, meaning you'd basically be able to play your whole hand at almost no AP. Now, at the start of the turn, you then activate 2 random lead cards, meaning this one can be very much more specific to which lead cards you activate. The only problem here is we already have a rare item which does exactly that, so this isn't as crazy. And then the last one here at the start of the turn, the cost of the highest card in hand gets reduced by 2 until used. So the clear favorites here are kind of the 1 cost reduction twice, the cost reduction based on how many moon pluses you play, the activate 2 depending on how you play it out. But no, then I guess the 5th one here as well. Bringing us to the last card, the Oni Hunt. The first one's going to be a 50 times 4 and increases the damage of the next bind card, not bond card, bind card. So the Shadow of the Moon is going to get plus 40, or it's going to be the next one gaining plus 50, but only 180, no multi-hitter. And then here we have the 3-hitter. If there are no attack cards in hand, gain plus 2 hits, meaning this is a 60 times 5. If this is the last attack card in your hand when you play it, you can create 2 Shadow of the Moon, grant them ephemeral to them, and reduce their cost by 1 until used. The importance here of this, I think Shadow of the Moon is probably her basic. So Shadow of the Moon is again the bind card down here. Now the only real question is, do they fuse instantly into each other? Because that's what it said, that it was going to fuse the Shadow of the Moons together because the bindings stack with each other. But here it seems like you'll just be able to get 2 Shadow of the Moons at no cost that then can stack. And then again, to keep in mind, you have the base values going up to 170% times 2 or times nothing. And if you have the inhibit effect from Bound at the Dusk, you add an additional hit, making it a 50 times 2 or a 70 times 3 at base. So we then apparently get 2 Shadow of the Moons with their cost reduction. And then for the last one, the Shadow of the Moon Plus gains plus 40% damage, and at the start of your turn you gain 3 Will-O-Wisps, meaning 3/5 of an additional bind card creation. So now that we went through all of these cards, let's once again have a look at the whole, have a look at how the character works, and then we go into the character's ego manifestation and partner. So yeah, there you go. When bind cards of this unit are in hand, stack into 1, meaning that the 2 create should actually probably fuse into 1, which means that only then that 2 bound Shadow of the Moon is going to be ephemeral, as I kind of thought. Then again, we have the inhibit with the drawback that you cannot get AP, but you can get around that by playing this inhibit only at the end of your turn rather than at the start of your turn, allowing you to get all your AP first, and you would still be able to play like a proper 1 turn without cutting away any of the AP gain shenanigans, and then you would still get the hit bonuses for the hits when you do them at the end of your turn. Then the curse shackles once again should be like the main way for you to get these Will-O-Wisps, and then obviously the Will-O-Wisps being the one that you gain 5 and you create them or change them into a card. So now that we're very familiar with her base, let's have a look at the rest. So the E1 is going to increase the base damage multiplier from 70% to 90% for Shadow of the Moon, so 90% times 2 hitter going up to 190 times 2, and the HP recovery from 5% to 8%. Now the E2 is very interesting in that when you use a Shadow of the Moon plus, you create a Shadow of the Moon card, meaning you create a bind 1 card that you could then stack into again by getting 10 Will-O-Wisps, allowing you to play another Shadow of the Moon to get another Shadow of the Moon base card back. So this one might be quite existential, quite important to making your Chizuru work, which would just be free Shadow of the Moon card generation after using it. And then the E3 is, so now for the E3 or copy 4, the damage of the plus 150 damage amount to Moonlight of the High Tide, so meaning you go from 750 to 900% single target damage from the ability. Then the E4 is when the Shadow of the Moon is created, you gain yourself 1 Lunar Shard, which is a buff, and the Lunar Shard buff increases your damage to Chizuru's attack cards at max 3 stacks. Important here, this doesn't seem to have a turn limitation, meaning that after creating 3 Shadows of the Moon for the rest of the fight, you're going to get plus 30% damage amount to all of Chizuru's attack cards, meaning all her various multi-hitters are going to various multi-hit that much harder. Then the E5 is just a 6% boost to basics, unique, and commons. And then the E6 is you change the damage increase effect to plus 15. And should you get 3 stacks of Lunar Shard plus 1 hit count of Shadow of the Moon plus card, meaning you go from a 2-hitter with the buff, inhibit buff or debuff, however you want to call it, to a 3-hitter, to then a 4-hitter that you could potentially even increase with the Epiphanies we've seen. So that's then the E6 or copy 7. So overall, just as like a general rating already for all of you, the Manifest Egos, the E1 seems quite sweet. The E2 is probably kind of where you want to be at, depending on how well she performs at E0. And then the E3, E4, E5, E6 are just things you can work on in the future. I don't think anybody should actually go out of their way to pull for those here. For that, she doesn't quite seem to be that valuable. Alright, so now we have ourselves her partner Itsuku with the passive Tranquil Marker. So the assigned combatant's attack is going to be increased by 8%. The dash means that it's going to be that at base value, the highest at the max copy. So at base or one version of the partner, you're going to get an 8% attack boost, which is honestly quite strong. And then you get a plus 5 to a plus 10% attack card damage bonus based on the copies. So let's just go with 5, meaning you can get plus 15% damage for the assigned combatant cards. But the important part here is this is not once per turn, this is not limited. So every time the assigned combatant cards stack, increases the attack card damage amount, meaning that if you get 1 Shadow of the Moon and then another and they stack together, you get your plus 5. Do this whole thing 4 times in total, 4 Shadow of the Moons. You have a throughout the fight plus 15% increase to all attack cards, meaning that if it's a 1-hitter, it's plus 15, 2-hitter plus 30, 3-hitter plus 45, 5-hitter would be, for example, plus 75. And then every time an attack card is used by the assigned combatant and this attack card used deals 3 hits or more, you apply 30% fixed damage to the target, which seems rather minor. It might be per hit or something else fancy like that, but for now it just kind of seems a little bit on the minor side, just 30 fixed damage per attack card that has 3 hits or more. And then we have the Moonlit Leisure, the Ego Point skill, which does AoE damage and gives you the Fierce Winds buff. And that buff increases your amount of attack cards used by plus 50%, meaning combined with the partner you would have like a temporary plus 65%, and this is indeed limited at 1 turn. Oh yeah, and just for funsies here, have a look at Passion Luke. Here, this is Passion Luke, and this is Nia without headphones. But no, let's just keep this on just for funsies and talk a bit about Chizuru and what she might or might not be able to do. So her inhibit is very restrictive, but it is definitely something you can play around with. And so long as that second Epiphany for the card, the one that gives you extra Will-O-Wisp per next attack card used instead of her own attack card, so long as that exists, she probably has quite a big amount of potential. And it all seems to come down to tactically using your Shadow of the Moons to get as many Shadow of the Moons possible, while then also probably using and playing around with the inhibit effect to, with the usage of Shadow of Moon, reduce the cost of other cards in hand. So this is Chizuru's full kit. Later today you'll also get a, I guess an introduction into my thought process between her and Yuki, so that you can make the best decision possible between Chizuru and Yuki. And also, if you again forgot about it, it's going to be a Tressa and Ray banner, meaning if you haven't yet and if you're interested in any of these characters' ego manifestations, now would be a good time to get them.